Welcome to our second to last Coffee Connect for this school year. Like Jill mentioned, we're going to talk about relationship skills. I'm Mackenzie Rydell. I am one of the SEBL Specialists, and I serve regions 1 and 2. So that includes ESUs 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, along with LPS and OPS. And I will let the others introduce themselves.
I'm Jill Gunther. I am another one of the SEBL Specialists, and I serve regions 3 and 4, which is ESUs 1, 7, 8, and then 9, 10, 11, and 17.
Good morning, everyone. Emily Arkfeld, the third SEBL Specialist. I serve region 5, ESUs 13, 15, and 16.
So like we always start off with a welcoming inclusion activity. We will do that again today. Just a reminder, these are some simple opening activities that you can do with your classes or with your staff. And it's just a quick way to build relationships and connect. And so this is a random question wheel that was already created. And so you can just spin it and it lands on a question. And then since we're virtual today, we'll answer via Zoom. So we'll just do a couple questions. If you are going to have a video go viral, what would you want it to be about? You can put your question in the chat or your answer to the question in the chat. Emily says, me winning the lottery. Jen says, around something crazy, silly my kids have done or a funny moment I often catch myself in. Ooh, travel related adventures, playing dominoes with my dad from Susan. Katie says dogs doing funny things. Love it. So you can eliminate the question after you answer it, and then it'll take it out of the wheel and spin again. So we'll just do one more this morning. What is one boring fact about you?
I don't think having 4 brothers is a boring fact. That is, you, especially if you're the only girl in those brothers.
Awesome. All right. So thank you for participating in that. That is linked in the Padlet if you think you want to use it with your staff or your students. Just a reminder about the Padlet that we have the different columns, so things you hope to gain and questions. If you have anything in there, if you're looking through and anything pops up, put them in there. We do look at that. And then we have activities and practices around relationship skills, and then additional resources, as well as general SEBL resources and some video resources. And the Padlet is the same link it has always been. And then we upload a new post on the very right-hand side with all of the resources and the recording and slides for each Coffee Connect. And the password is capital NeMTSS. So as we know, SEBL is the systematic process of fostering those social and emotional skills among students and adults in order to create that safe and supportive environment that has positive behavioral outcomes for all. We want to emphasize the systematic process and the adults, because we know that if we want our students to show these skills, we want to do it intentionally and systematically. And we need our adults to have those skills before we will see the most results in our students. And as you've likely seen, if you've been to our Coffee Connects before, we need to have these competencies, the CASA competencies, self-management, self-awareness, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making in order to have our positive behavioral outcomes. And like I mentioned before, we want to do this all systematically. Part of that is realizing that in education, we do silo a lot of things. A lot of times we do it and we might do it unintentionally. but we want to be mindful of all of the different systems that we have and start thinking about how can we incorporate this into one system that runs the whole ship. And we can talk about our climate, we can talk about our mental health, and we can talk about academics all within the same systematic process. Here's our web that we've created. It just talks about some of those specific skills within each competency. This isn't an end all be all for the skills. It's just a starting point to think a little bit further about what some of those skills within the competencies might look like. And within relationship skills, today we're going to focus on teamwork, conflict resolution, being a good friend, and communication. And we'll talk about some of the activities that we put together or that we gathered. We didn't really create them. We just gathered them in one place for you all. And then we'll let you go for the day. So I'm going to let Emily take it over.
Thanks, Mackenzie. Jill put the link to the PDF slide deck again in the chat if you guys jumped on a little bit late and need that. And then also, if you've not already, please put your name and your role or where you're joining us from in the chat, just so that we can kind of keep a running list of who's here, and that kind of helps with our attendance. So defining relationship skills, it's funny, I feel like when we were putting this one together, of all the ones, this one was the one that was like, well, most people probably are like really know about this, because in education, we know that all learning is relational. This is pounded into us about having those relationships with your students, with your colleagues, and then how are you helping students build those social skills and those relationships with their peers and the adults in the building as well. I tried to put some things together for you guys that maybe you haven't come across before. So relationship skills are the ability to build those positive relationships. We really want to point out that especially with diverse individuals and groups, so everyone needs to know how to have those positive interactions and those relationships with people that are different from them, maybe not who they would usually gravitate to, but being able to have those skills with everyone. Using a variety of methods is communication, teamwork, conflict resolution, and being a good friend, like Mackenzie talked about just the slide before. And then we really like this piece about building those healthy relationships involves resisting inappropriate social pressures. I think that is a huge thing of just being able to say no to things that don't feel good and making sure that your relationships are healthy and build you up and not necessarily, you know, bring you down. So this is just, we always kind of break this out a little bit further for the one that we're talking about today. So some of those skills, like in teamwork, that collaborative problem solving, being self-motivated, conflict resolution, practicing emotion regulation. So going back to that self-awareness and self-management, we need to be able to do that to be able to have appropriate conflict resolution. Being a good friend includes standing up for others. So that social awareness piece of things we've talked about, and demonstrating cultural competence. Communication, active listening, and those verbal and nonverbal cues that are coming from people. So being able to read those and respond appropriately. And then genuine assertiveness. And we know sometimes assertiveness gets a bad rap of being like that being assertive is kind of a bad thing. We really just want that it's just being genuine in who you are and your values and standing up for that, and kind of those boundaries that we've talked about throughout these as well. I found this, I put this in here just because I love this wholehearted counselor. She is on Facebook and she's always kind of sharing these free resources, which are just great information, and then puts it in a aesthetically pleasing manner for all of us. So if the handout link is in here for you guys, if you don't already follow her on social media, she's a great one to follow. She's on Teacher Pay Teachers and puts out a lot of free handouts for use. And so kind of getting into our activities. So under, oh, this one isn't even under one of our specific breakouts. This is just a 60-second relate break, a great way to help kids and educators and staff learn about each other. in a fun way. So these are not to be based off of the content being taught. There's other activities for that, but really just fun questions in little micro frequencies to have your staff interact with each other or your students interact with each other. And so I feel like since the pandemic, our kids have kind of lost some social skills and that ability to like, how are we making face-to-face conversations? And so this is a great way to just kind of do that in little bits of like, hi, how are you? And asking someone a question and learning something about them and responding. So we want to make sure we got that one in there for you guys. Oh, also, sorry, I forgot the link in there. The get to know you questions. So you can use that for this. And then that would you rather slide deck, again, just something fun. We've used it in trainings where we have people like stand up or sit down or move to this side of the room or this side of the room and get some movement in with just kind of those fun questions. And then you get to also learn about each other, like, oh, these people are like always on this side of the room with me. We must have a lot in common. So link that in there too. For teamwork, just doing a small group puzzle. It also is, communication and conflict resolution. If you want to do something one way and your partner wants to do something a different way, how do you work through that? So something easy, you can do this for little kids up to the big kids, depending on the size of your puzzle pieces and how many pieces you have. And for an extra challenge, you can give them a time limit and give them kind of that pressure to work through that communication and conflict resolution. Escape rooms, they're fun to do in person, but really I think over COVID and things, doing them online kind of blew up, which was I don't know if I can say blow up, really grew. And so this BreakoutEDU link, there is a free version. I think it's maybe 14 days and then you have to pay beyond that. But if you just want to test it out or you have something coming up that you want to use it for, you can log in and do that. Great way to just build that community and kind of all those things we talked about, that communication, conflict resolution, teamwork things. Jill, I know you had used this a lot. Do you have anything else to add to it?
No, it was actually one of my colleagues that used to use it a lot, but yes, just like you were saying, she did have the paid version. So our media specialist was able to get that for use with a few of our staff. But it was just great, especially at the beginning of the year. They used it for a lot of the teamwork and team building skills, but then as just part of a review, they would use it for like before an upcoming unit test or things like that. So just something fun that the kids really enjoyed.
Yes, thank you. Mixed messages. So, having them talk about a conflict from a TV show or movie, or watch one if you have a good clip that kind of touches on this, and then have them talk or write about how those characters were handling the conflict, and then have a further discussion about, is that an appropriate way to handle that conflict? Are they doing it well? What kinds of ways could they handle that better? And so just kind of reflecting on what that conflict resolution can look like and should look like. This is a nice video that kind of goes through the steps of like what healthy conflict resolution looks like. There's also lots of other great clips on this YouTube page, so you can kind of explore those if you want to. And then just some reflection questions with that, kind of going along with the slide before, but what are some ways you've handled conflict? What are some strategies maybe you want to use in the future? And then why is it important to have these conflict resolution skills? The friendship spotlight game, having just students recognize what are healthy friendship skills or flags or, stoplights. So here it's red, yellow, and green. And so in this handout there, well, it's linked in the Padlet. In the handout, there are different scenarios you can use, and then the students you can print them off and they have to identify, like, this is red, this is yellow, this is green, or you can have a conversation about it. But then also if you feel like your group can do this, having them identify some on their own and where that might fall in the red, yellow, green, or think about your friendships and what are some skills that you feel like your friends have, or what do you like about your friendships, and then kind of putting those where they might belong. Speed friending from greater good, kind of like speed dating, but they have 30 seconds to describe themselves to their peers. And so having them identify things that they really want someone to know about them in that short amount of time helps them also that self-awareness and building upon their strengths of what do I like about myself and what do I want other people to know about myself. And then practicing, again, having those face-to-face conversations and learning about someone else and talking about yourself as well. Drawing twins. So having partners or groups if you need to have groups, but having one person either come up with something they want to draw, or you can have some pre-loaded ideas, and then they have to describe the picture to their partner, and their partner has to draw it. And then looking at like, what is that? How do their communication skills, did they communicate what they needed to effectively for the partner to draw what the original picture was supposed to be? And then talk through some of that, like, what could I have explained better, or where did we miss pieces? And so this is about like online messages. So we know that our students live kind of on social media and texting. And so helping them identify, I feel like kids, not even kids, I feel like we all misread messages sometimes. So a text comes through and there's no exclamation point, or an email from your boss that says, please come to my office, period. And you're like, oh no, what did I do? And our kids are doing the same thing of like, my friend's mad at me. They just said, okay, and no smiley face. I don't even know if they use emojis anymore, but just having them talk through that, how you can misread things and how you can misinterpret things. And then what does that mean? Because then you're in a fight for a week when really your friend meant something else. So picking out some of those things that might be sent online and talking through the different like voice tones and inflection and nonverbal cues that normally we would get in a conversation, and how do we do that over online messages.
Perfect. Thank you, Emily. So lots of great, just different activities as we're going through each of those skills within relationship skills. So if you think back to kind of that little web that Emily shared at the beginning, we always like to give at least one activity to kind of go along with each of those skills. So just talking a little bit more about what does that look like for relationships for educators? And like Emily mentioned at the beginning, this is probably, one of the most common ones, because we all know how important it is to build those relationships, not just relationships with our students, but also relationships with the families, caregivers, with the community, with our colleagues. And so all of those pieces, all of that building of relationships are important, and how we do that. Some of the other skills, so just how we're managing conflict amongst those different relationships, how we're practicing empathy, being sure that we're practicing compassion and looking at things from different perspectives. And then also just being a good model. We've talked a lot as we went through each of these competencies that we really need educators to be able to have those competencies so they can model those things for students. And so modeling leadership, modeling teamwork, and cultural competence, all of those important pieces. We love the little visual on the side of this slide, just because it gives just some good reminders for some different ways to build relationships with students. But kind of throwing it back out to you guys, because at least I know in my experiences, teachers have such great ideas of just different ways to build relationships, especially at the beginning of the year. But we also have to remember that it's important to continue that building of relationships all throughout the school year. So I think we do a really good job of doing some of those get to know you activities and really kind of trying to build on what the students' interests are and things like that at the beginning of the year. But sometimes we maybe kind of forget to continue those practices on throughout the year. So throwing it to you guys, we would love for you guys to put in the chat, what are some just different ways that you like to build relationships? And it might be build relationships with students. It might be with families or caregivers. It might be with colleagues. It might be with community members. So we'll give you guys a couple minutes just to kind of think about that. And then we would love to see some things in the chat. Because again, sharing is great, and being able to share some of those ideas with our colleagues is super beneficial.
you prefer to say things out loud, also, please feel free to unmute
Yes.
and and talk about them too.
For sure. Good point, Emily. Attending activities. So yes, extracurriculars. That's, was a huge thing. So I worked previously in a high school setting. So especially, I mean, students love to be able to see you at their musicals or at their plays or at their basketball games, or even if you can't make those things, just asking about those things.
And so when I was a school social worker, that was a huge way for me to even just get to know my colleagues by volunteering to work those sporting events with other staff that were working them that I might not have a conversation with otherwise. So that was a huge piece in me in building those relationships with colleagues.
For sure. School dances, another great one.
I found it to be very helpful as an educator and as an administrator to attend those sporting events and plays, or in anything that was of real interest to kiddos, especially those who were typically seen in a negative light because they had academic issues. But another thing, when I was really trying to build relationships with the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders who thought they were too cool to have adults in the room with them, I found a project to be very helpful, and that was to have them bring pictures that depicted kind of a timeline in their lives. And they loved sharing pictures and telling, it just kind of opened up an easy way to communicate about their lives and to feel like the adults were interested in learning about their lives.
I love that, Katie. Thank you for sharing. And so many great things in the chat as well. So Jenga game, ooh, I loved that one too. So putting some different questions on the Jenga game, or looks like one of the colors is to share something about yourself. So I used to also like tape little questions on there. Or numbers, taping numbers on there, and then the numbers correspond with like different questions. Maintaining relationships, so curiosity, so just asking those questions. Success journal, ooh, I love that. Positive postcards home. Yes, all great ideas. And if you guys have any others that you want to share out, but make sure and definitely take a look at those in the chat, because those are just great ways to build those connections, build those relationships. Again, not just with the students, but with our colleagues and with our families and community members as well. All right, this is our self-assessment. So each time we do one of the Coffee Connects, we like to share this just again, because it's a great resource for those personal just SEBL reflections. And so this is something that you could share with your colleagues. This is something that you could do yourself, but it really goes through nicely each of the different competencies. And you're able to really just assess each one of those within the skills there. So it's just a nice tool, and it's also in the Padlet along with a couple other self-assessments as well. Relationship skills at home. So again, each time when we go through the competencies, we like to share just kind of some different ideas for building those particular competencies within the home. And so we have some ideas there for relationships, and then we also have the handout linked. And so that includes each of the competencies and then the skills or the activities for each one of those. So something that you could share with caregivers, something that you could share with colleagues as well. So not just for home, but as you're getting to know just more about each of the competencies and some ways to continue to build those within the classroom. And then we do have, so we have the exit ticket linked here, and then we have it linked in a couple of other slides as well. But just continuing to think about and share, especially around the relationship skills, but things that are maybe going on in your district, in your ESU, as we are kind of closing out the year, but things that you would maybe just like to bring to the group, things that you would like to share with the group, maybe a recent success or win that you had around SEBL. And again, feel free to unmute to share those things, ask those things, throw them in the chat. But we'll give you just a minute or so just to kind of think about those things or things that you would want to bring to the group. So Mackenzie has up the Padlet with all of the different resources as well. And then just a reminder, we have the previous Coffee Connect resources and video links on there as well. So she is scrolling through some of that for you guys.
Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to highlight, there are a couple of resources we didn't go through today that are geared towards early childhood. So if that is in your realm, they have the NCPMI website has some good social stories that are created. They have a planning guide. This could probably be used for all ages, but your schedule and then opportunities to embed like friendship and relationship building. And then they have a solution kit for the classroom and for home. And these are like pre-made picture cards. So if a student, you can use it with your student and they learn all of the different solutions. So when they're having a problem or they need help communicating, you can show them the solution card. And then that kind of prompts them to do that skill. And so I just included those in the Padlet, even though we did not go over them. And if you have other resources you use, you are free to add them into the Padlets. They are editable for you to add. So.
And you'll be able to continue to access all of those resources as well. And we'll just continue to build on those through our next Coffee Connect as well. We do have, so like usual, we also have the relationship skills video on there. So it's always just a great resource. Again, something that you could share with colleagues, something that you could share with students, but it's just a nice overview of that particular competency. We did, so last time we had you guys fill out within our exit ticket, just some feedback on whether or not to change our last Coffee Connect. It was pretty late in May. And the feedback that we got from you guys was, yes, preferred to move it up earlier in May. So we did move that date. So be sure to mark that on your calendars. It is May 11th. So that will be our last competency. We'll be going through responsible decision making during that May 11th timeframe. And then we also have some save the dates as well for next year. So we don't have the topics on there yet, but we did want to give some dates to you guys. So it'll be kind of the same format. It sounds like mornings were working best for people. And then since we record it, you guys can always go back and watch those as well. But we do love to have just that interaction and be able to kind of have those conversations and that sharing live as well. But we do have the dates, so be sure to mark those down on your guys's calendar. We have the sign up link for the July 20th one. So we did want to do one just kind of as a little back to school. So we're going to do it a little bit later if you guys like to sleep in during those summer months, maybe just a little bit. So 8:30 to 9:30 Central Standard Time. And we do have the sign up live for that July 20th one. And then we have the dates for next school year. If you guys have particular topics, things that you would like to continue to explore during this Coffee Connect time, we would love that feedback as well. You can certainly email us. You guys can drop it in the chat. And I believe we also have, Mackenzie, help remind me if I'm wrong, but we have an area in the exit ticket where they can put things as well, right?
I think I only put that in the next one in May.
Okay. So feel free to drop it in the chat, send us an email. If you guys have particular ideas or things that you would like to explore during this Coffee Connect, we would love to see those as well. All right, just a reminder about our summit also coming up. So Nebraska MTSS Summit is coming up in October. So it is October 12th through the 14th. So again, just be sure to mark that down. We would love to see all your guys' faces there. So be sure to mark all of these things in your calendar in planning for next year. All right, and as we kind of close out today, we would love to just bring you back to thinking about those relationships and thinking about some of the ideas that people shared in the chat, that we had conversations about, that we shared with you guys today. But what relationship are you really going to intentionally nourish this week? So continuing on this week, and then as we close out these last few weeks of the school year as well. So we would love to know in the chat, or again, you guys can share that out as well. As you guys are working on that, Emily also put the exit ticket link in the chat, and then also the July 20th registration. So you have those two links as well. I love what you guys have in the chat already, thinking about those relationships, continuing to nourish some of those things. Transitions, yes, most definitely are difficult, and how you nourish those relationships. All right, well, we appreciate all of the sharing, especially all of the information that you guys shared and how you build those relationships. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of the week, and let us know if you have any questions or if you guys have feedback as far as some of the different topics and planning for next year as well.